A community of inquiry is a small group of students who work collaboratively on a research project. Students learn by working collaboratively on real research projects that they choose and producing some artifact, such as an essay, blog post, presentation, or video that will be a contribution to public knowledge. In this video, I describe the use of the community of inquiry approach in an undergraduate law class. The context is a third-year course, Land Law 1. Land Law 1 is a core course in that students need to pass it to be eligible for a place on the Postgraduate Certificate of Laws, the PCLL. Students who intend to qualify as solicitors or barristers must take this course. In 2016-17, there were 67 students. Teaching followed the standard format for core undergraduate courses. There were 13 lectures of 1 hour, 45 minutes for the whole cohort. The cohort was then split into 4 smaller groups of between 18 to 20 students for 45-minute interactive tutorials. There was a course site on the university's learning management system, Blackboard. The lecture theatre is set up for information transmission, not for active student engagement. The design described in this video gave students the opportunity to work in small groups but outside the lecture theatre. The physical layout of the classroom may not be the only barrier to be overcome. Students may be used to the information transmission approach, and so they may need help to understand both the benefits of the community of inquiry and how to work in one. The students were given a mini project, a class participation project, to work on. They were asked to produce a research topic relating to an aspect of the Land Law 1 syllabus. They could choose to produce a blog post, podcast, or video to present their research findings. They could work alone or in groups of 2 or 3. These small groups were the communities of inquiry. Those students who chose to work alone didn't get the benefit of this community of inquiry approach. Provided the students submitted the work required, they would get the 10% class participation mark. This class participation project put active student engagement with knowledge at the heart of teaching and learning. The research project was the focus of student learning. Students still got lectures and access to other resources, an e-book, a blog with details of relevant cases, and an annotated bibliography pointing students in the direction of relevant articles. Crucially, however, these resources were made available to support the student research projects. They were not presented as a set of legal facts to be memorized. This slide shows some of the comments we received from students who chose to work in collaborative groups on their class participation projects. Take a moment to read them. The students taught each other, clarifying uncertainties for each other. Collaboration increased the pool of ideas. The students learned that they could complete a collaborative project despite having differences of opinion. All of the students who worked in groups said that they would do so again given the opportunity. The students who worked in groups were asked about what they would do differently next time. Interestingly, they reflected on the experience and came up with lessons for future collaborations. They're shown in this slide. In a previous video, we saw some of the advantages of the community of inquiry approach for student learning. One of these benefits is that students engage in a carefully structured process of inquiry and develop their critical thinking skills by engaging in and reflecting on that process. The previous video explained the practical inquiry model developed by one group of educational researchers. This is a 4-stage, easy-to-understand model of the collaborative, critical process at the heart of the community of inquiry. This slide shows how the activity described here maps onto the practical inquiry model, at least for those students who chose to work in small groups. The research question chosen by the students was the triggering event. The exploration phase refers to the phase in which students brainstormed ideas and researched relevant cases and articles, making use of them to understand the problem in greater depth and to work towards a solution. In the integration phase, the students pulled their ideas and sources together to create the blog post, podcast, or video that they would submit. In the resolution phase, they went public with their ideas by submitting them to me. They could also post their work on a blog within the course Blackboard site. The benefit of this design is its simplicity. It's easy to set up and to explain to the students. It's also easy to explain to other teachers who can either replicate it or adapt it as they see fit. The 10% pass-fail mark attached to this project meant that it was a low-risk item of assessment for students.
We created a student-edited public blog, Issues in Property Law, and the students were encouraged to publish the work that they did on this blog. Several have done so already. This is a screen capture of the blog. The URL is www.iiplhk.org.
The law faculty has approved a new blended learning elective, Issues in Property Law. This builds on the design described here. Students who take the elective will work in collaborative groups to produce a blog post and presentation. They'll then work individually on a research project that builds on the work that they did in their collaborative groups. If you're interested in adapting this idea for your teaching, here are some things to consider. What are your intended learning outcomes? Perhaps developing the ability to think critically, to present findings in the form of a blog post, to learn to work collaboratively. These should shape everything else. How will you get the students to choose their triggering event, the research question that they're going to work on? Will group work be compulsory or optional? Will the groups work in class or out of class? How will the groups be formed? What do the students have to produce, a blog post, video or podcast? What learning resources will you put in place to support them? These relate to the subject knowledge they need, and perhaps also guidance on matters such as how to produce a good blog post and how to work collaboratively. How will you assess the work? How will you make sure that the criteria support the learning outcomes? How will you communicate the criteria to the students? Will you facilitate the publication of the work, perhaps offering some editorial support before submission to a blog, perhaps even creating that blog?